You're listening to Messianic Insight, the live podcast from Kehilat Etz Chaim, Tree of Life Congregation in Toronto, with Messianic Rabbi Ben Volman.
This topic came up on our way to shul this morning. I was told, of course miracles matter. Well, I guess that solves that. I guess we can go right to the Kiddush. Or not. It's a strange title. It's a strange title. A woman goes to her rabbi and she says to him, I need you to pray with me for a miracle. And the rabbi says to her, do you have faith? And she says, faith? What are you talking about? Didn't you read the Torah? First Israel goes through the Red Sea, then they said, we believe. That's the strange thing about miracles. You know, we say we'll believe if we see a miracle. But we're waiting for that miracle sometimes. We're waiting for it. It's a strange thing. There's something, though, that excites us about miracles. I've told the congregation this before. I was in this conversation with Sid Roth, and he was saying to me, because I said, why do you have this particular focus? He said, Ben, I know that people who are watching my program would not want to go to a church, a Messianic congregation. I know Jewish people will come to hear, or they'll come and turn on the TV to watch miracles, even if they won't do anything else spiritually. And yet, I think this question is important because, we live in a world that really questions whether or not the miracles we speak of here are true. People don't actually believe a lot of the miracles we talk about in the Bible. I mean, if you were to say to somebody, I really believe that Israel walked through the Red Sea on dry ground. I mean, people are tolerant of us when these things come up. But unless you believe in God, you won't believe in these miracles. That's just the way it is. That's the way we are. So do these miracles that we talk about matter? I mean, we're talking about it here. But these things that supposedly happened thousands of years ago, do they matter now? Do they matter now? Well, okay, somebody said yes, I guess we can go to the Kiddush. No, we can't just presume. We can't presume. This is a question, this is a deeper question. Because we are often trying to struggle to explain to people how we believe, why we believe. Many years ago, when I first preached on this, I had an extensive sermon proving how the events of the Red Sea could very well have happened through a specific event, an earthquake, which might have caused such a separation. there are specific geological indications that such an event happened? Well, we could go into that kind of detail. But why would we believe miracles anyway? Why do we want people to believe miracles? The fact is, there is only one miracle that counts. There is only one miracle that counts. It's the miracle that you believe God came into your life to transform you where you are. That's the only miracle that counts. Because after that, well, I used to have a roommate when I lived in Chicago as a graduate student many years ago. And over time, we had this practice of praying together every night. It was a wonderful discipline. And at one point, because we had gotten to know each other, and we start to share one another's testimony, we both said to each other, if God could save me, he could save anybody. But of course, the other side is the world is so resistant. Try talking about it. The world is resistant. Some of you know this story. It's the story of the little boy who comes home. His mother says to him, "What were you talking about in shul today?" He was in Shabbat school. And he says, "Well, yeah, we were talking about that whole thing about, the Red Sea." And his mother says, so how did it go? And the boy says, well, Moses is leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and then Pharaoh shows up with his whole army, and he traps them. They're all trapped by the Red Sea. So Moses gets his engineers to construct a temporary bridge across the Red Sea, and then the Egyptians are still coming after him. So Moses goes up in a helicopter, and he calls in his fighter pilots to carpet bomb the Egyptians, but they still keep coming. And just as they're still coming, he tells the engineers who have already planted bombs inside the temporary bridge that just as the Egyptians are in the middle of the bridge, they blow the suspension bridge apart. They all fall into the sea, and that's the end of the story. They're all gone, and Israel goes on, and everything's fine. And his mother says to him, "You didn't hear that in shul. Come on." And the little boy says, "Yeah, I know, but if you did hear what I heard, you wouldn't believe me anyway." So that's the way the world reacts. When we ask this question, we are not really saying, do we believe in miracles? What we are asking is, what's the point? What's the point? And there's got to be something. There's got to be something more than saying we believe, because there are many miracles, but this perhaps is the greatest miracle of all time. And if this one doesn't count, what counts? Daniel in the lion's den, the armies of Assyria suddenly fleeing from the walls of Jerusalem, even though they are fully equipped and able to attack. How about Balaam speaking to his donkey and going out and blessing Israel? How about the victories that we spoke about today of Deborah and Samson and Gideon? Do those count? They all count. They all count if we know why they matter. And this great miracle compels us, first of all, because really, although we can say there probably is an explanation, in another sense, this miracle says to us there is a greater story that we are a part of. You are part of a greater story. Your life seems mundane. It's a challenge. It's a struggle. And sometimes you are just like Israel up against the Red Sea. You see that mountain in front of you, or you see that problem, that illness, that heartbreaking circumstance. And then suddenly, God breaks through. God breaks through. That's the moment. And Israel sees it. And you know what's amazing about, this is why this moment is amazing. Because at this moment, they all are one mind, one heart, one spirit, and they say together, they sing together, "Oh Lord, you are highly exalted. You know, the horse and the driver who are pursuing me are now thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength, my defense. He has become my salvation." That is the cry of those people who have clung to God and seen his hope fulfilled. This phrase, "He's my Father's God," it's an unusual phrase. Some people think, well, is this Abraham, or is this the God who we trusted in because our father spoke of him, even though we were in slavery? But this God is shown. He's a warrior, and the Lord is his name. And Pharaoh's chariots and his armies hurled into the sea. You know, this actual phrase is an ancient phrase. This is a very ancient poem. Actually, the truth is, these words are as ancient as we could expect if they were spoken right by the edge of the sea. They are not, from just a few hundred years. They are ancient Hebrew of this time. This was as if Israel is remembering with the ancient voice of their people. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. And your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. And now we know who stands at the right hand and intercedes for us. And these beautiful words which we say every Shabbat, "Who among the gods is like you?" This was not God's fight just against Pharaoh. This was against all the gods of Egypt. And in a sense, this is God's victory over the gods of this world. And there are many gods in this world challenging our God. Who is like you? Majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders. Who is like you? When I originally planned this message, I had expended some time working on a completely different topic. I was going to talk about how the Old Testament is such a challenge for New Testament believers. Because this is one of the problems when we describe God as a warrior and the events that happen here. For a lot of Christians, looking at the events of the New Testament, sometimes the question is, does this God fit in with the what I consider to be the loving testimony of Jesus. In other words, when you look at the Red Sea, is this what Jesus would do? It's a bit of a problem. I was going to talk a little bit about that. I decided that was secondary. It's secondary because, every week we talk about integrating our Brit Hadashah faith with the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible. But the key point is right here in verse 2. V'hi Yeshua. He has become my salvation. Our salvation is from the God of Israel. And that essential truth, either you cling to that and believe it, or there is no salvation. This is the salvation that has continued and walked with Israel from the beginning. And this is what Yeshua speaks about. Now, the interesting thing is, when Israel says these words, they are kind of using a future tense, which means, let's sing. But the commentators say, you know what? This is really telling us that this song of Moshe will be sung when Messiah comes. And indeed, that's what we read about happening in heaven. Revelation says, when God is about to reveal Messiah, this is the song he will sing, the song of Moshe, and these words that are added to it. Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty, just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Who will not fear you, Lord, and bring glory to your name? The truth is, at the root of our Brit Hadashah is the God of Israel who creates for himself a people out of all the nations whom he has put together as a single people, but for whom he has never forgotten his promise to Abraham. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. This is the faithfulness of God. And that's the whole point. This is the interesting thing about miracles. You see, miracles have one problem. Miracles have a problem. Don't think of miracles as having a problem. Miracles are supposed to be a solution. But they have a problem. Because, think about it. Pharaoh had just seen 10 incredible miracles. As soon as Israel left, what happened? What did he say to himself? He said to himself, you know what? They're gone. What am I fearing? Let me go after them with my army. What was I afraid of? Man, that was, what was I afraid? Frogs, thunder, lightning. Hey, I'm a god. And I got chariots. Those are real. These Israelites, they're going off into the desert to worship some god. Hey, I've got a real message to deliver to them. Wait till I bring them back and I show them some reality. Well, what was his problem? He didn't believe, right? Didn't believe. Just like that, he forgot all that had happened. He forgot the son who had lain in his arms, struck down at the will of a God he could not conquer. He forgot it very quickly. But of course, Israel isn't like that. No. Israel, as soon as they get out of here, they're going to go walking in the desert. They're going to go for 3 days. They're not going to find any water, and they are going to turn on the people who led them there, and they're going to say, how could you have possibly taken us from Egypt where things were so much better than they are here in the desert? Remember that? Look, it took Pharaoh about 1 day to forget about God. It took Israel about 3 days. I guess they were 3 times more righteous than he was. That's the interesting thing about this. Miracles are often a moment. Miracles are often a moment. You are all, most of you are here because of a miracle in your life. How faithfully did you walk right after that? And how about the whole distance? Man, miracles are often of a moment. They are often not the solution we expected. Miracles come and they can transform things. But then they're past. And just like everybody else, it's like we're just immersed back into our mundane life. And we have to figure out how to deal with where we are. And it's tough. That is the amazing thing. That's the amazing thing. You know, when Yeshua is with his disciples in this boat, it's one of the miracles that all the gospel writers talk about. And it is one of the most mysterious, actually. I could have talked about, there are so many amazing miracles that Yeshua does. But this one is intriguing. It's intriguing partially for me because when I was studying it, I was studying one of my favorite authors, commentator, Alfred Edersheim, the 19th century commentator. And he says, really, there's nothing quite like this. He says, yeah, people think there's some story like it, but there's no story quite like this one. It's a story about how Yeshua is, speaking on one side of Kinneret, Sea of Galilee, and then he says to his disciples, let's go to the other side. Of course, they're fishermen, they have boats. They get a boat and have no problem sailing it. They're familiar with this, but suddenly a furious squall comes up. As you know, storms could sweep down into the Kinneret, happens all the time, and a furious squall comes up, waves break over the boat, it's nearly swamped, and there's Yeshua. He's in the front of the boat, and he's sleeping on a pillow. And the rest of the disciples are seeing the whole boat slowly swamped with water, and they wake him up. Don't you care if we die here? What's going on? We're sleeping. We are in desperate circumstances. They're terrified. And he gets up, rebukes the wind, says to the waves, quiet, be still. The wind died down. It was completely calm. And he says to his disciples, why are you afraid? Don't you have faith? Haven't we been through enough together? Didn't you believe in me? How many miracles had they seen? How many times had Yeshua done things that were beyond explanation? And they're sitting around and they're thinking, who is this guy? Who is he? And that really is the moment, in a sense, when we realize, this is a real challenge, this walk of faith. No matter what you've experienced, no matter how many miracles you've experienced, your life of faith will be a challenge. There's a very simple and straightforward lesson here. And it's this. When you stay close to Yeshua, you know you will be safe. But there are times you'll feel like he's sleeping. There are going to be times when you're going to say to yourself, where is he? What happened? Isn't he paying attention? We're dying here. What happened? Where were you? You're like Martha's by the bedside of Lazarus. You're like the disciples during those days when Yeshua lies in the tomb and they can't explain what happened. Miracles are transformative. But you know, the life of miracles is not all it's cut up. It's not all it's, cut out to be. Because miracles come and go. But miracles are not the point of your faith. Your faith is not really about the miracles. Your faith is about the character that Yeshua is forming in you. I want to give you a statistic. It's a statistic you all know. How many of the 2.4 estimated Jews and mixed multitude made it from one side of the Red Sea to the other? How many? What percentage? What percentage? 100% of the people who left Egypt and went through the Red Sea were saved, right? 100%. How many made it to the Promised Land? 2.4 million left. Yeah. I think that's less than 1%. I don't know. My math isn't that good, but that's a guess. Maybe it's more than 0.0001. It's a pretty small number made it. Why? It's not about the miracles. You know, the journey is just as important as the destination for a believer. The truth of the matter is, it's not worth the trial of the journey if you can't say, I'm going to make it to the destination. The truth is, we are being shaped right now through the toughest things we are going through. And it's not the miracles that will change us. It will probably be the tough things, the tough moments where we wonder where God has gone. Some of the most difficult lessons have been the most valuable. And that's one of the most harsh things to learn. But the truth is, unless you are humbled by your own sin, scourged by your own admission of your weaknesses and struggles, unless you are honest about the challenges that you face in being the kind of person Yeshua has been shaping you to be, unless you are completely honest about what this is about, what this faith journey is about, you may not be all that great company all the way to the Promised Land. One of the toughest realities I faced happened this week. I saw a beloved friend. Hadn't seen him for years. We were in the same congregation for years together. But the leader had what's called tall poppy syndrome. I wasn't around when it happened, but I know that at a certain point, this man he was a young man of tremendous promise to our movement, equipped himself, studied, prepared to do real work for God. But at a certain point, he got cut off, hurt, and he's disappeared. I saw him this week. We spoke. It was great seeing him and his wife again. But I was heartbroken because, you see, when we were young in the faith, we experienced a lot of miracles. I'm going to be honest. I experienced a lot of miracles. I asked that question to somebody. I said, I used to have this incredible, vibrant, almost miraculous kind of experience as a young believer. And this friend of mine said, I always thought you were kind of like a Baptist. It was kind of like came through, did what you had to do, and now you're just doing more of the same. No. It wasn't like that at all. I used to kneel by my bed, and I would experience the most amazing sense of the presence of God. But I knew nothing. The congregation I went to, they really weren't equipping me for the life of faith. And finally I said, Lord, my heart's full, but the brain's empty. Can you give me something a little bit more than this? And that's how I ended up here, by the way. Yeah, the miracles were amazing. But you know what? We didn't have much love for each other. We were so busy showing how superior we were in our faith life. We weren't caring for each other. We didn't know that it wasn't miracles that counts. It's the heart that counts. It's what God is doing on your heart. That is what we have to say to the people around us. Not, this is what I believe, but tell me, friend, what's your story? I bet it'll break my heart, but I'm willing to listen. That's what we have. No one believed in miracles more than Paul. No one. No one experienced, the most incredible miracles more than him. Look what he says. I don't want you to miss the significance of what happened to our fathers. All of them were guided by the pillar of cloud. They passed through the sea, and in connection with that cloud, they were being led by God himself. They passed through the sea, and in connection with the cloud and with the sea, they all immersed themselves into Moshe. He means they immersed themselves into all that God had promised them through the covenant which Moshe would fulfill with them at Sinai. And they ate the same food from the Spirit. They all drank the same drink from the Spirit, for they drank from a Spirit-sent rock which followed them. And of course, here he means the very presence of Yeshua. Exactly what they were singing about from the beginning. You have become my salvation. Their salvation was with them the whole way. And that rock was the Messiah. Yet with the majority of them, God was not pleased. So their bodies were strewn across the desert. Now these things took place as prefigurative historical events, warning us not to set our hearts on evil things as they did. Don't be idolaters. As the Tanakh puts it, the people sat down to eat and drink, got up to indulge. And let's not engage in sexual immorality as some of them did. And some 23,000 died in a single. Let us not put Messiah to the test as some of them did. And we're destroyed by state. Don't grumble as some of them did, and we're destroyed. These things happen to them as prefigurative. Well, I hate that word prefigurative. I can't even say it. But it basically says things that happened beforehand for us to understand. And they were written down as a warning to us who are living in these last days. Acharit Hayamim. That's what miracles are about. About nothing else. You know, the truth is the world doesn't believe our miracles. Even if they happen in front of us. They don't believe them. They won't believe. They can't believe them. They won't believe them because they don't believe in God. But we believe. So when we reach out, we have to reach out as if we believe in the power of God to reach the people around us, even if they don't believe. We have to believe that God can reach people around us who are impervious. So we have to have the right heart. It's not about what we know. It's about who we are. It's about who we are. Nothing else matters. But even if God recreated Israel in the 20th century, the world does not particularly believe. But I want to tell you a little story, a miracle, a Holocaust miracle. This Holocaust miracle happened in Buchenwald, the most horrific places on earth. And it happened just as the Americans entered the camp. They entered the camp and they found horrors beyond their belief, far beyond anything they imagined. It was the very first time they had seen such horrors. And they were accompanied as they walked into this camp, which was filled with terrified Jewish survivors, by a U.S. Army chaplain, Herschel Schachter. The American officers and Rabbi Schachter were devastated by the carnage they saw, and they walked around with dazed expressions of disbelief. At one point, though, Schachter stood paralyzed in front of what was clearly a mound of corpses. He was unable to move. And then suddenly, something caught his eye. He spoke to the general next to him. I think I saw something move. He was trembling. I think someone in there is alive. The general said to him, Rabbi, it's impossible. Don't you see? Don't you see? It's impossible. No. Schachter insisted. See? I'm seeing it. I'm looking at it. And the general repeated, I know how much it would mean to you to save even one life. But I assure you, it's your imagination. These people are dead. Schachter wasn't persuaded. He drew closer. He began circling, and then he stumbled upon a small child, wide-eyed with fear, who'd been hiding behind the pile of bodies, and whose slight motion his eye had detected. I found a child. It's alive. And he knelt down before him and embraced him and said, what's your name? Lulek, the child, answered. How old are you? The rabbi asked. What difference does it make? The boy said. What are numbers? With what I've seen and what I experienced, I'm older than you. You can laugh and you can cry, but I can't do either. Schachter spent several months in Buchenwald. Here's a picture of him ministering to the survivors. He was later very involved in bringing numerous refugees out of Europe, some to America. One of them was named Elie Wiesel. But little Lulek didn't go to America. He went to Israel. And from 1993 to 2003, he was Rabbi Israel Meyer Lau, the chief rabbi of Israel. Because, you see, God still does miracles. And the world cannot see them, but we must have the heart for them. We must reach into what doesn't seem living and reach in and find life. And that's the only miracle that counts. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the miracle of our salvation. Thank you, Lord. We've never thanked you enough. We've never thanked you for that incredible moment where somehow you reached into my life, the life of these friends around me. Lord, you did something amazing. But I haven't been all that amazing. I've just been kind of, struggling and, trying to make it, trying to keep the faith. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But I'm going to stay on the path. I'm going to keep pursuing you, Lord, because there are miracles still to see. There are miracles still to experience, but that's not what it's about. You've called me to be a blessing. We're not here we're not here just for our own sake. We're here for one another. Help us, Father, to take hold of that blessing, that moment when we might really matter, when we might be the miracle for somebody, even in a small way, helping to transform their Red Sea experience. Because if we can take one step forward together, it's a real step of faith. And we come a long way sometimes to even make a single step of real faith. And that's why miracles matter. Because, Lord, you matter. Thank you. In Yeshua's name. Amen.